Hello and welcome to Feedstuffs 365 and National Hog Farmer. I'm Ann Hess. Guided by the We Care ethical principles, on-farm data is a proof point to build public trust and allows supply chain partners to use real data and partnerships to achieve their sustainability commitments. Joining us today to discuss how the Pork Checkoff and supply chain partners are working together to provide cost share for farmers, along with the progress that's important to the supply chain, is National Pork Board's Chief Sustainability Officer, Jamie Burr, and Nestle's Global Sustainable Sourcing Lead, Daniel Peerless. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for having us.
Before we jump into today's discussion, I'd like to remind the audience tuning in, you can post your questions at any time there in the chat, or if you're tuning in via social media, you can post those there in the comments. So, Jamie, let's kick off our discussion here today by having you briefly explain the We Care ethical principles and its implication within the supply chain.
Yes, Ann. Thank you. Thank you for that question because I think one thing that's important for us to remember is really We Care has been, like 17 years in the making. It was developed in 2008 for producers and by producers, and it was our commitment as producers to how we do what's best for people, planet, and pigs. The We Care ethical principles are public health, our people, communities, animal welfare, environment, and food safety. And those things are all, really our core values. In fact, in at Pork Forum, our board decided that we should move the We Care ethical principles to our core values because that's baked into what everything that we do, no matter what project or what investment we are investing in, it is our core values as an industry.
Very good. Daniel, can you tell us more about your role with Nestle and your connection to the pork industry and its sustainability initiatives?
Sure. So I should start by saying that I'm Nestle's responsible sourcing lead for dairy, meat, poultry, and eggs. I sit on a team called Climate and Responsible Sourcing, and I have counterparts that work in other priority commodity ingredients for Nestle, like soy and vegetables and spices and coffee and cocoa and palm. So I help to define, monitor, and report against Nestle's responsible sourcing objectives and KPIs for the dairy and meat, poultry, egg ingredient categories. And we have a number of responsible sourcing criteria that very much track with what Jamie just mentioned about the We Care program. That includes animal welfare and human rights and a variety of criteria that are posted in our Nestle Responsible Sourcing core requirements. But I also work quite a bit on climate work. And in 2019, Nestle, or 2020, sorry, Nestle committed to a net zero by 2050 for that entire corporate footprint. So scope 1, 2, and 3. The majority of our footprint comes from our ingredients. At our heart, we're an agricultural company. And so about 70 plus percent of our greenhouse gas contribution comes from the farms and the animals and the producers who provide our ingredients. And so I got connected with Jamie and the National Pork Board to look for opportunities to work with producers in the climate space, bring Nestle resources and sort of expertise, and help with facilitating climate projects in pork.
So, speaking of opportunities, Jamie, what checkoff funded tools are available here to help a farmer measure and document, benchmark, and report their sustainable practices?
Yes, Ann, I'd like to start the answer to that question with a formula, if you don't mind. And that is the formula is principles times practices times proof equals trust. And that proof bucket is where we are really operating in with our relationship, from my perspective, with Nestle. We've already got the principles developed. As I mentioned earlier, that was developed in 2008. The practices are the things that we actually do on the farm around animal welfare, public health, food safety, environment, etc. But the proof comes in to where we work with producers to do on-farm reports. And that allows us to gather their data and then to aggregate it in a way that their data is very secure. It's very private. That's the most important part of this project to producers from my perspective. But it's also the most important part is that providing that proof so that we can finish that equation of trust. So I think one of the most important things a producer could do is work with, in collaboration with EOCene, to take their data, develop that baseline report, and then EOCene can provide information to say, all right, here's your baseline report, and then here's the opportunities for improvement. And then again, this is where Nestle comes in. Nestle has been a significant investor in, alongside with USDA, in a grant program so that we can provide funding to encourage practice adoption that then reduces that environmental footprint, if you will, across each farm. And then that's the tool that we have. One is the on-farm report, but importantly also is the collaboration that we have with Nestle through Daniel, is that practice implementation to continue improvement in all areas of environmental outcomes.
Speaking of that collaboration, Daniel, Jamie said, the pork industry is committed to doing what's best for pigs and people and the planet. How does this align with Nestle?
Oh, it's absolutely aligned with the qualification that Nestle is committed to the people, the planet, and profit. People, planet, profit is an important element of this, but in its portion of the impact that is felt through its sourcing. So while Jamie and NPB represent a large swath of farmers, Nestle is working to abate and improve its impact, relative to its size, the amount and type of ingredients that it sources. So this is something that the partnership lines up really well in that Jamie and EOCene can go and initiate the baseline reports, and Nestle can bring resources in that allow us to make credible, verifiable claims in our reporting against our targets, saying that we have worked with the supply chain, worked with producers to reduce our footprint, or bring projects and deployments and new technologies, bring down the cost of those, share the cost, and allow progress throughout the industry.
Jamie, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about results and like outcomes. So I'd like to share with you, if you don't mind, Ann.
Yeah.
We just released our sustainability report. I mentioned in 2008 we developed the We Care ethical principles, but in 2022 we set, as an industry, our producers set goals and metrics. And this year is the first time we've been able to report against those through our sustainability report. And let me share just a few highlights. Let's talk about animal welfare first. 96% of the farms enrolled in this program have an employee that is trained in the PQA, the Pork Quality Assurance Program. So the Pork Quality Assurance Program, I think, is one of the things that's important about that is actually USDA has deemed PQA to be in compliance with International Standards Organization's animal welfare guidelines. Those standards are an international standard, and USDA has said, hey, these programs fit right into ISO standards. So again, 96% of all our farms have a team member that's been trained in this and certified in this program. A couple other highlights: 79% of participating producers use reduced tillage. What does that mean? Well, to give you an example, carbon sequestration is a big one that results out of using reduced tillage. what we have found is these producers that have enrolled in the program, they have been able to sequester just over a quarter of a ton per acre of carbon in the ground. And that's also resulting from a net on-farm emissions perspective of about 0.44, so a negative number, a negative 0.44 tons of carbon. So we're acting as a carbon sink in the pork industry. And it's because of the use of manure and the use of being able to use that cycle, that nutrient cycle that takes feeding corn to a pig, taking the manure from that pig that's produced, putting it on the corn, and then putting the corn back in the pig. So it's that nutrient cycle that's also a continuous improvement cycle to get to these results.
Yeah, those are impressive stats. I know you guys are rolling out a new version of PQA, I think, here at World Pork Expo, and it's good to hear, a majority of farmers are entering into that tillage and the nutrient cycle. As we wrap up our discussion here, I know we're getting close to Earth Day too. Any key takeaways, thoughts to leave our audience? Daniel, I'll start with you.
Oh, there's so many, but I for your audience in producers, I want them to know that although they may not know that Nestle is a customer or necessarily where their pork goes, we're not seen often as a meat company. The We take our commitments seriously, and we take our commitments to our producers seriously, and that when we make uh, a commitment, when we make a claim, we want to work with and through organizations like NPB to reach the producers to make sure that when we claim a benefit, when we claim that our ingredients are increasingly more responsibly sourced, um, that we have shared that burden, that we have helped to make it possible, and we haven't put all of the weight on the producers. And that's the right way to do things.
Jamie?
And I think by your question, I'm reminded of the saying that farmers were the first conservationists. And I think that the data that I provided is proof. Like I shared that equation earlier, and I am just so happy with the number of producers that have raised their hand and said, you know what, we are doing the right thing every day for people, planet, and pigs, and we want to provide our data. Now we want to be careful with data security, but we want to provide our data so that we can have a proof point that protects our freedom to operate, but not only our freedom to operate today, but so that I can hand my farm down to the next generation so that they can continue to farm. And I think I would be remiss to say and to remind ourselves that less than 2 out of every 100 people in the United States are providing food and fiber for us. And while farmers aren't very prideful people, I hope that they can kind of, be prideful of the fact that they are producing food around the world and doing it in a continuous improvement way to where they're reducing the outcomes that are associated with what we do every day.
Great point to end on. Jamie Burr, National Pork Board, and Daniel Peerless with Nestle. Thank you both for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Thank you, Ed.
For you and our audience, we thank you for tuning in today. For more coverage and conversations on pork industry related topics, be sure to check out the live and on demand section of Feedstuffs 365, as well as our National Hog Farmer website. For Feedstuffs and National Hog Farmer, I'm Ann Hess.